Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. Packed with emotion, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly makes an unscheduled stop at the White House press briefing today.
General Kelly jumps in to defend President Trump's recent controversial phone call to the widow of a slain U.S. soldier.
Kelly taking issue with Florida Congresswoman Frederica Wilson for what he calls politicizing a soldier's death.
Kelly's own son was killed in the line of duty in Afghanistan in 2010. MOLA LENGHI has the latest from Capitol Hill.
White House Chief of Staff John Kelly lashed out at Florida Congresswoman Frederica Wilson for politicizing President Trump's effort to console the family of a fallen soldier.
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted.
Wilson was with the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson on Tuesday when the president called to offer his condolences. Johnson was one of 4 soldiers killed in an ambush in Niger on October 4th. She was critical of the president's tone and message.
It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred.
Chief of Staff Kelly said he first urged the president not to make the call. When the president insisted, he counseled him on what to say.
He's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message.
Kelly also told reporters what happens when an American service member is killed overseas. He said the body is flown to a nearby air base where it's encased in ice, then flown to a second air base before being transported to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. There, he said staff prepares the body for burial and dresses it in its military uniform before heading home. The next of kin are then paid a visit by a casualty officer.
And the casualty officer proceeds to break the heart of a family member.
MOLA LENGHI, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
General Kelly said he chose his words of advice for the president, relying on the words of comfort he received when his own son was killed in Afghanistan.
And in what he said was not a criticism, Kelly noted that President Obama did not call when his son died, and he says he is fine with that.
Here locally, the man shot by 2 police officers outside a Billings motel early Wednesday, now upgraded to stable condition. The man was shot after police say he refused to put down his shotgun and then proceeded to raise and swing the gun towards officers.
Q2 Samantha Harrelson has been following this story. Sammy, what can you tell us?
Jay and Jeanelle, very few updates have been provided since the shooting occurred. What we do know, the suspect, who is now in stable condition at a local hospital, had been to the KT motel multiple times in the hours before he was shot. Around 10 p.m. on Tuesday, police were called because a man had fired a shotgun into the roof. They were called again around midnight for reports of a man walking around the motel parking lot with a shotgun. Officers returned to the motel around 1 a.m. That's when officers say the man refused to follow orders and drop his weapon, and then swung the shotgun in the direction of the officers and was shot. Police confirmed there was another man driving the pickup the suspect was in who walked away before the shooting. Police have not confirmed whether or not they are searching for that man. The manager of the motel told me he believes this group has been in and out of his parking lot, often late at night, for the last several weeks. The 2 officers involved are on administrative leave per department protocol. They have not said how many shots were fired, only that the suspect did not fire at officers. The name of the suspect has not yet been released, and the investigation is ongoing. Jay and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks, Sammy. The suspect accused of stabbing a man to death on the Crow Indian Reservation back in June, now identified just a week before he is set to be tried. Andrew Plentyhawk is charged in tribal court with deliberate homicide, aggravated assault, and intimidation. Plentyhawk is accused of the murder of 29-year-old Tim Bigman. Federal authorities declined to say where on the Crow Reservation the incident took place or what led to the stabbing. Under the Major Crimes Act, felony offenses on the reservation are typically prosecuted in federal court. That's because tribal judges can only impose a maximum sentence of 3 years per offense for up to 3 offenses. But we can tell you that as of today, Plentyhawk is not charged in federal court.
A former land trust director from Missoula, Grant KIER, is one of 3 Democrats in the running for Montana's lone U.S. House seat. KIER is a newcomer to Montana politics. Today, he sat down with MTN's Mike Dennison to talk about the race and why he's running.
Grant KIER recently stepped down from his job as director of the Five Valleys Land Trust to run for the congressional seat now held by Republican Greg Gianforte. He says he believes Montanans want a congressman who brings people together to solve thorny problems facing the state and the nation, and that Gianforte isn't doing that.
What I feel like we've seen from our current congressman is that he prefers to focus on how to divide us and how to focus on putting us against one another in terms of our problem solving, and I think we deserve better.
The 42-year-old Kansas native moved to Montana in 2005. He's worked with 2 Western Montana land trusts, helping agricultural landowners, conservationists, and others preserve current land use and access to public land. The 2 other Democrats in the race so far are Billings Attorney John Heenan and State Representative Tom Woods of Bozeman. KIER says he's a Democrat because he believes all people should have equal opportunity to succeed, and that government has a role in that process. He says the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is a good example of government working to help those who need health coverage, and that it should be maintained and improved.
I believe very strongly that we should be working across party lines to fix what's broken in the Affordable Care Act and make sure that we do not interrupt the important care that people are getting right now through the Affordable Care Act, and we protect what's working with it and we fix what's broken.
For now, KIER says he's traveling the state to introduce himself to voters and try to convince them that he would be a pragmatic problem solver as Montana's congressman.
And I think fundamentally what Montanans are really tired of is a hyper-partisan debate. And I have proven over the years, as I've been in Montana, that I'm respectful of people who have different views than me. I'm capable of building bridges across divides, and I'm capable of finding solutions that impact people's lives every day.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Thanks, Mike. And the Democratic primary election is still more than 7 months away next June.
For the 3rd time since July, an earthquake rattles residents in Lincoln, Montana. That quake today, a 4.3, hit around 4:20 this afternoon. And according to the U.S. Geological Survey, it was centered 4.5 miles east-southeast of Lincoln at 3.2 miles in depth. No reports of any serious damage or injuries, but today's quake follows a 5.8 quake that shook the Lincoln area back on July 6th of this year. That quake in July followed by numerous other tremors the following week, the strongest of which was a 4.0 that shook the Lincoln area on July 17th. Today's tremor was felt for hundreds of miles across central Montana, even as far away as Whitefish in northwestern Montana.
On the weather front, Bob, this perfect autumn week is going to close out with some gusty winds.
Now, the winds are dying down tonight, but we are expecting them to pick up significantly tomorrow. Let me show you. Here's our wind forecast. Now, you'll see not bad around Montana tonight, but watch this. By tomorrow morning, we get a new cold front moving through, and you can see it there. 30-mile-per-hour winds in Livingston, 12 miles per hour in Billings at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But by later on that night, by 6 o'clock, now Billings has got 32-mile-per-hour winds, and then the whole thing continues to push its way out of the state. And then again, by Saturday, we're looking for strong gusty winds in eastern Montana. Again, Livingston 30-mile-per-hour winds, Billings about 23-mile-per-hour winds on Saturday afternoon. So because of that, Weather Service has a red flag warning for much of eastern Montana. Winds gusting to 55 miles per hour starting at noon right on through midnight tomorrow. So what we could see is if a fire gets started, it will burn out of control in a hurry because of the strong gusty winds, low humidity, and even the chance for some thunderstorms in the area. We'll have the chance for that in a couple of more minutes.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Up next in tonight's Health Watch, we'll take a closer look. 1 in every 10 Montanans has answered the call to serve, while data shows each day 20 veterans across the country take their own lives.
And in sports tonight, Scott is one-on-one with Tyler Hamilton, the cyclist who ultimately forced Lance Armstrong's doping confession.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green.